Family that left me on the streets at 16, now 30 years later want to apologize and make up for lost time. I've been lurking on Reddit for a long time, reading countless stories about families, hardships, and survival. After 30 years of holding on to mine, I feel like it's finally time to share what happened to me. It's not an easy tale to tell, but I hope it provides some catharsis for myself and maybe even resonates with someone out there. When I was just 12 years old, my entire world shattered. My mom, the person I was closest to in the world, passed away after a long, painful battle with breast cancer. Watching her deteriorate broke something inside me that I didn't think could ever be fixed. It was just me and my dad after that. We became each other's support systems, but the emptiness left by my mom's absence was something we could never fill. The house felt cold, hollow, as if the life had been drained out of it. For a while, it was just the two of us, trying to navigate the grief and make sense of a future without her. My dad, bless him, tried his best to stay strong for me, but I knew he was hurting. The nights when I'd hear him quietly crying in his room were the worst. In a way, we were both lost, just two people clinging to each other, trying to survive the storm. But life has a way of moving forward, whether you're ready or not. When I was 14, my dad met a woman named Ashley. She was a bright, lively woman, full of energy, the complete opposite of what we had been used to in our grief-stricken home. Within a year, they were married, and suddenly, I had a stepfamily. Along with Ashley came her son, Mark, who was also 14, and her daughter, Emily, who was 12. From the outside, it might have seemed like the perfect chance for a fresh start, a new family to rebuild what had been broken. But things rarely turn out that way. At first, I tried to be optimistic. I got along well with Ashley, she was kind to me, and she seemed to genuinely care about my dad. I even hit it off with Emily. She was sweet and shy, and we had a lot of similar interests. But Mark, that was a different story entirely. From the very beginning, Mark and I clashed. It was like we were in a constant competition for everything: space, attention, respect. Every little thing seemed to turn into a battle between us, and I could never understand why. It wasn't like I wanted to fight him, but he always found a way to pick at me, to make me the bad guy. Things went from bad to worse after my 16th birthday. I had a small gathering at the house, and Lisa came over to hang out with me. It was supposed to be a fun day, but it turned into the worst nightmare I could imagine. While we were sitting in the living room, we heard my stepmom, Ashley, suddenly screaming from upstairs. We all ran up, panicked, thinking something terrible had happened, and in a way, it had. There, in the middle of my room, Ashley was holding several pairs of Emily's underwear, screaming at me, demanding to know why they were in my drawer. I was speechless. I had never seen those clothes before in my life. But it didn't matter what I said. No one believed me. They all looked at me like I was some kind of monster. I tried to explain that I didn't know how they got there, but no one wanted to hear it. And then, as if on cue, Mark swooped in with the final blow. He claimed that he had seen me staring at Emily in a creepy way and that I'd once said I wished I could marry her. Of course, it was all lies, but that didn't stop anyone from believing him. Lisa slapped me across the face, calling me a disgusting pervert. My dad? He dragged me out of the house by my arm, telling me that he wasn't going to keep a pervert under his roof. I begged him to listen, to believe me, but his mind was already made up. He shoved me out the door, locked it, and left me standing there, alone and confused. I remember banging on the door for what felt like hours, crying, pleading for him to let me back in, to at least hear me out. But all I heard from the other side was silence. Eventually, the locks turned again, the door swung open, and my dad stood there, looking more disappointed in me than I'd ever seen. He told me to get lost and that I wasn't welcome in his house anymore. I tried calling my grandparents, hoping they would take me in, but my dad had already spoken to them. They didn't want anything to do with me either. In their eyes, I was already condemned. There was no trial, no defense, just judgment. At 16, I found myself homeless, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. I spent the next 2 years surviving on the streets. Those years were some of the darkest in my life. The things I had to do just to make it through each day, I wouldn't wish on anyone. I was cold, hungry, and constantly on the edge of despair. There were days when I didn't think I'd make it, when the thought of giving up seemed easier than continuing to fight. But something kept me going. Maybe it was anger, Maybe it was hope that someday things would get better. I don't know, but I survived. When I turned 18, I got a job at a boxing gym in another state. The owner took a chance on me, gave me a place to stay, and slowly, I started to rebuild my life. Boxing became my outlet for all the rage I had bottled up inside me. I wasn't a world-class fighter, but I was good enough to hold my own. The discipline, the focus, it saved me from drowning in my past. At 35, I met She was working at a cafe near the gym, and the moment I saw her, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a connection. I know there's a big age gap between us. She was 20 at the time, but that didn't matter. We just clicked. Over the next 2 years, we fell in love and eventually got married. Her family welcomed me with open arms, and her dad, who was an electrician, even hired me to work for him. He didn't say it out loud, but I knew he wanted to make sure I could support his daughter and be a stable presence in her life. Now, 15 years later, we're still together. We have 4 amazing daughters, and just recently, I passed my master's license as an electrician. It wasn't easy. I had to go back and get my GE first, but was my biggest cheerleader through it all. She's been my rock, my support, the love of my life, and I can't imagine where I'd be without her. She's the reason I was able to heal and move on from the trauma of my past. And then, just last weekend, I got an email. It was from Emily, my stepsister. I hadn't heard from anyone in my old family in over 30 years, so to say I was shocked would be an understatement. The email was long, really long, but the gist of it was this. Mark had gotten drunk with some friends and started bragging about how he set me up all those years ago. He admitted to planting Emily's underwear in my room and lying about me because he wanted to be with Lisa. And, yes, Mark and Lisa ended up together and married. Lisa heard everything, and she immediately told Emily. Emily spent the whole weekend tracking me down to apologize. She and the rest of the family want to meet up, to make amends, to apologize face to face. But here's the thing, I've let it go. After years of therapy and the love I've received from my wife and kids, I've moved on. I don't need their apology. I don't need them in my life. My wife thinks I should at least write back, maybe throw in a snarky line about how it only took them 30 years to believe me. But honestly, I don't even know if it's worth that. I've already made peace with my past. Now I just want to live in the present, with the family that truly matters to me. There's a quote from boxing that hangs on the wall in our house. To see a man beaten not by a better man, but by himself is a tragedy. I remind myself of that every day. I won't be beaten by my past.